The Titans play the Saints week 1, who have a lot of transition in their own right. Titans were catching 3.5 in that game. That'll be week 1 in New Orleans. That is one of our moves. We're going to talk right move or wrong move. That's now down to 3 pretty much market wide, also combined with the fact the Saints will not have Alvin Kamara as the running back now that his suspension has actually been made finally. And so I wonder, you're down on the Titans, but at least for week 1, is that the right move or wrong move in your opinion?
According to the model, Ben, that would be the wrong move.
Oh!
I've got this projected at a 4.25-point win for the New Orleans Saints. So an edge there for me. And I will say this, in all seriousness, not only with what I've done here, but just my own, usual, the way I go about things, I would circle the New Orleans Saints again. As somebody who would bet the Titans coming into this, right, as a candidate to go to have the worst record in the NFL, who has bet them under their win total. I'm not very high on Tennessee coming into the season. So I do think that this is something where I'd rather be on the side of the New Orleans Saints. Everything that I've done points me to New Orleans Saints or just a negative year for Tennessee. So I would say wrong move then if that's the case, right?
To me, 3 is at least where I have these teams coming into the year. Sure. That's the right number. I don't blame bettors for grabbing the hook when it was out there. This also has all the makings of a super high variance game, and I don't know.
Absolutely.
At least as my first glance as to the week 1 card, I don't know why you'd want to. You would have a super amount of conviction into that game unless you're able to get the 3 in the hooks, which have now since gone. That might get back there depending on where things go here next few weeks. Other news that comes out. This is the opening night of the season, and we finally saw a lot of interest in the Detroit Lions at 7. A few days ago, market finally got off 7. It's now pretty much consensus 6.5. So the Lions getting some action as a dog. Now, they weren't going to have wide receiver Jamison Williams anyway, suspended for 6 games to start the year, but he and Amon-Ra St. Brown each went down at practice yesterday. And it sounds like Williams got the worst of it. He had a hamstring issue. He is now out for the rest of the preseason, and he will not even be on the field anyway till week 7 with that suspension. But irregardless, JVT, Lions getting some attention, moving off that key number of 7.
Now, if I go to the model here and what I've poured into it, the more I've poured into it, the more the deficit has shrunk. I've got this at just like a 7.9-point win for the Kansas City Chiefs. My own thoughts would kind of be on the side of, if we're talking 6.5, I'd rather be with Kansas City as well. I think the Lions are one of the teams that I have circled as I think the market has overvalued a bit. When you talk about a team that's third worst defensively by EPA standards, and you added some bodies in that secondary and, of course, on this defense as a whole, but I don't think they're very impactful players that can actually – and even if there's improvement, Ben, how much improvement can you make from being the third worst team defensively to – what are we talking about here? What's a realistic leap,
sure,
right? 20th defensively, something like that. And against Kansas City that, yes, has questions at wide receiver, but I still think it has enough offensively with Patrick Mahomes to take advantage of what was one of the worst defenses out there last year. I think that this would be one where I would say probably – I think it's the right move in that I understand taking 7, but I think it's the wrong move in that I believe that if you're giving me under 7 with Kansas City at home to open this thing up, I would be on the Chiefs.
If it was 7.5 going down to 7, I would say right move.
Right.
7 is, I believe, the right number. I don't understand one, especially at this point. Bringing it down to 6.5. I would not be surprised. You have to think Chiefs will be in a lot of money line parlays week 1, a lot of 6-point teasers week 1 with 2 teams. Would not stun me if this gets back up to 7. So I would say, if you like the dog in the first place, don't panic. It's not like you've seen the last of the 7s. There's a long way to go before week 1. And also, when you're thinking about a complete rebuild on defense, not exactly the optimal start to that journey, JVT, when you're the worst yards per play defense, 30th against the pass, and you get a guy named Patrick Mahomes at quarterback as the Chiefs unveil another Super Bowl banner.
Yep. Look, I think in today's day and age, when we kind of alluded to this when we talked about preseason and the way the offense is going and how we're getting higher scores. But there's already kind of this thought process that defenses in today's National Football League are really just beholden to the offense that they're facing for the most part. And if you can at least do some stuff in the red zone to keep teams out, then, of course, you're going to set yourself up for success. But between the 20s, you're just going to kind of bend to the will of the offense that you're facing. And I think that's going to be the case. Now, Detroit is a good offensive team, but there's also, I think, some signs that Jared Goff, you could make the argument, it could be due for some regression if turnover-worthy play rate continues, but those start to turn into turnovers. If there's any sort of regression in terms of him as a quarterback, I think there's some real questions about what Detroit can be, at least from the standpoint of where they're priced at the market, right? Minus 160 to make the playoffs, favorites to win the NFC North, under a touchdown on the road against Kansas City. Those are the things that I have my questions.
Sure. As far as the other line moves for week 1, we're talking right move or wrong move here to start the hour on the Lombardi line. 2 games in week 1 that have already moved a whole 1.5. One due to big injury with Joe Burrow having the calf strain and his status still up in the air for Cincinnati. You can understand certainly why that game has adjusted. based on just speculation there with the Browns going from 2.5-point home dogs now to 1-point home dogs. The one I'm interested in your thoughts in, though, is the Denver Broncos Las Vegas Raiders Week 1 spot. In Denver, from 3 to 4.5, is that the right move or wrong move for you?
This got bet up -3 to -4.5, right? So
yes, Denver getting the money.
I would say I would lean toward right move. I think the model that I put together actually has this essentially a pick, 0.7-point win for the Denver Broncos. I think a lot of that has to tie into the stats that I use. Of course, Denver terrible on offense last year. But I think when you look at it from the Raiders' perspective, I have questions as to how good this defense is going to be. Yes, in camp, and of course, as we saw against the 49ers, looking very opportunistic defensively. But I don't know if that's more about what they were facing. Again, talking about the offense you're beholden to, guys like Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and others allowing this Raiders defense to perform well and join practices, and of course, again, in that game on Sunday. But I got real questions as to how good this defense is going to be, and real questions about what this offense is going to look like. Obviously, Devontae Adams dealing with whatever lower leg thing that is. Jimmy Garoppolo has not looked good himself in camp, and just doesn't sound like he's going to get a lot of time in preseason. Does that lead off to a poor start? I think I'd lean a little bit toward wrong move here.
Really? Wrong move. Interesting.
Yeah.
This is the one of all.
Excuse me. No, I'm getting my right move here. Yes, excuse me. Yes.
So you're a believer in.
Yes, I got my wires crossed. Yes.
Come on. The model is throwing you off.
It did. I made the entire case. I made the entire case for the Broncos, and then of course, no, wrong move. No, right move. Right.
I have the Raiders as the worst defense in the AFC heading in. If you look at combining the front seven secondary groupings, and I'm not. We talk about panic meter, but we always focus on that. We don't focus enough on height meter, and does it get out of control? And this whole preseason thing for the Raiders, how many times have we seen a team look really, really good and prepared in the preseason, and then it's not even close to what you end up watching in the regular season?
Went undefeated last year, right? As we talked about with Josh McDaniels, he clearly wants to. He's talked about establishing a winning culture a lot last preseason and this preseason. I think that's kind of what this preseason success is about. And then them two, by the way. So I've got two bets on teams to have the worst record in the NFL. Tennessee Titans, Las Vegas Raiders are the other one. I think that this is a team that if it goes south, I think can go pretty far south.
Outside of Duke Shelley coming in as a corner, you look at the rest of that unit with David Long Jr., Nate Hobbs at corner, Trayvon Moehrig, Marcus Epps at safety, and that's just a whole lot of blah.
When you add, put it this way, when you add multiple bodies to a single position in an offseason, you're essentially throwing stuff at the wall to see if it'll stick for you. And that's what the Raiders did in the offseason with their secondary. And I'm not really a massive fan of that when you're talking about one of the more important positions defensively.
Yeah, 31st in pass defense on an EPA per play basis last year, 30th in yards per drive allowed, tied for 27th in yards per play allowed defensively. And it's not like the pass rush really worries you as much as Max Crosby is still a dude off the edge. What else really is there right now?
Him and Chandler Jones and a rookie who's unhealthy.
And can Jones somehow recapture the form? That's a big thing for the Raiders. So I definitely agree. That is the most of the right moves I really do like for week one.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.